Thank you so much, Matt. And for people on the call who haven't met me before, my name is Lele Duan. I am a 3D technical consultant working from professional services at Esri. I'm relatively newer to Esri compared to other people who have introduced them to before. I joined Esri last year, and before that, I have been in academia. I have a background in urban planning. And in my work at Esri, I'm a 3D technical consultant. So the professional service is like the consulting department, under Esri. So we get a lot of the projects. And given my role, I work with 3D projects in general. So of course that involves CityEngine. And given the nature of a lot of the projects I'm going to talk about today are ongoing. So that is why I really cannot share details of those projects or clients' information with you all. But what I plan to share is some of the general trends, and actually 5 trends that I have observed for how CityEngine is being used in those projects. I'm actually glad that my presentation is sort of at the last, because a lot of the trends that I'm going to talk about today are already being talked about by previous presenters, and they have shown you some really, really cool and great visuals and models that they have built. And something I wanted to point out is that in my work with clients, it's almost never that clients will care about what kind of tool you use. So it's never the case that they will specifically saying that we want to use CityEngine for this purpose and CityEngine only, or we wanted to use reality capture for this purpose and reality capture only. They care about the results, and whatever methods combination you use to get them the best results they want, that's the way to go. So in this process, I can see that CityEngine sometimes will be the main thing that clients already recognize and saying that is a tool we want, that is a visualization we want from CityEngine. But there's also other trends that clients and we did not think CityEngine would actually be in the picture until it became, the tool that we relied on in the end, and which is sort of like later on, a couple of the later trends I'm going to talk about is sort of increase awareness of these alternative workflow that you could implement. So first trend is 3D modeling. So like I said, this part has already been talked about by previous presenters. So I'm going to share one already finished project from Pinellas County, Florida. And one commonly used CityEngine user case in my work is to enhance the ArcGIS urban model using CityEngine to visualize the design scenarios. So in this case, Pinellas County asked professional services help them to develop the countywide ArcGIS urban model. And on top of that, they selected several sites that they said it would be great if we could actually add a little bit design and architectural design facade to these selected sites to better communicate to our planning board. So these are the sites that they selected. And based on the scenario changes in the ArcGIS urban model, right? And then we were able to basically implement a South Florida beach style, is what we call it, building design style to these changes. And they basically presented this project in front of the planning board and got pretty positive feedback on how well these visualizations could actually convey the idea from building masses, colored building masses, to actually something people can understand. So that's one very common case that I see in my daily workflow, is to enhance the ArcGIS urban model. And of course, with how easy we can use the street designers now, it's really easy to add a couple of pedestrian streets to enhance the idea of this is a walking plaza, right? This is not for car, etc. And we are also contracted often by clients who want to have the exact model as they have in the city. I wanted to emphasize that this is a fake building footprint that you're looking at. This is not real client data, but the idea is the same, is that clients sometimes will come to us saying that we would want 3D base map for our entire city or county. And of course, in that case, we would probably use LiDAR to generate the 3D base map for that. But on top of that, often case clients would pick several iconic buildings in the city, and they would want those buildings to look as realistic as possible. And given the time and, of course, budget and technology available to the clients, we would sometimes pair it with reality capture, right, to create 3D meshes for those buildings, and sometimes we would use CityEngine to create those buildings for them. So for example, if a client says, here is a hotel that we would like to have in the middle of the city, in the downtown area, could you help us to model that? And in our case, we actually would use CityEngine to model that hotel, right, in this example, to give that realistic feeling, to merge into the entire 3D base map that the clients want for that city or that county. And the second trend that I see that I don't think have been mentioned by previous presenter, which is a very interesting case, I did not really think about it before, is that CityEngine in my user case have been used to create these non-existing buildings. To be more specific, in two user cases. First is, of course, if people are trying to create some historical content, right? And the historical content, by that I mean it's way back in the history that we did not really have photos or digital maps to document those, period of time. So what we would do is we literally would grab information from books, poems from that time, or paintings, documentations, and trying to convey those idea description of building styles and to visualize that in CityEngine. CityEngine is a great tool to use in that case because apparently you cannot use LiDAR or reality capture, right, for that purposes. And if that client is asking for that kind of visualization for large scale, then CityEngine is a perfect tool for that case. And the second case to create the non-existing building is a client that I worked with recently. Because of the nature of the client site, is a very high sensitive area, but they also want a digital twin and 3D model representation of the area. So the request was, we want a 3D model of our site. However, if people look at our site, look at our buildings, they should not be able to identify, this is our site, this is our building. So in other words, they want to have something 3D so that they can use probably internally or maybe externally. But given the sensitivity of the site itself, they want everything to look sort of like the area. However, none of the buildings should be accurate, which is the reverse from most of the requests that we get. So what I did in the end is to do two steps of the alteration. So first step is to alternate the building footprint. Right, for the CityEngine users on this call, how many ways you could do that step, right? You could separate the building footprint into different chunks, or you could create setbacks to make it look different than reality. So that's the first step. And then the second step is I purposely created a set of rules that will give you that general building feeling in that area. However, if you look at the building, for example, the screenshot on the screen, it's not a real building, right? There is no window or door, it's all concrete. But when you look at it, you can sort of tell that's a building in that area in general. So that's the idea from working with that client, is we basically alternated a lot of the building details. We put fake heights, we change heights to random number within a reasonable range, and change the facade to these very generic facade. And we have a set of these facades to give it some variation, and basically generalize the whole idea. And then the client was delivered with a digital twin that they can use to represent the site. However, no one can identify the actual information, accurate information from that site. And the client was very happy with the result. So that's a very interesting way that I saw CityEngine was used in my workflow. The third trend that I see CityEngine is being used is to work with a parcelization, especially in greenfield development. So we are seeing there are multiple requests already that people are looking at. What if I have a greenfield and I wanted to start playing with the ideas of how I can put parcels on the greenfield, even before talking about anything else. Manually drawing that will be time consuming. So doing the parcelization in CityEngine saves a lot of time. And given the seamless integration between CityEngine and Urban, you can actually work out a whole workflow, starting from a blank field of greenfield and then coming up with parcel scenarios, as many scenarios as you want. And you can work out the volumes and the zoning, play with those information in Urban, bring it back to CityEngine to give it a more realistic texture. And then, you have the freedom to do whatever you want after that. You could export a web scene even to XR viewer if you wanted to entertain that idea. So I would like to shout out to my colleague, Jason Carrion, who's on the call right now. So Jason and I are actually turning this idea into a formal blog right now. And he is the one that came up with this super awesome unofficial title for the blog, which is a ping-pong approach to ArcGIS Urban and CityEngine. We're not sure we're actually going to use it in the end, but you get the idea that this is going to be a back and forth integration between Urban and the CityEngine. So stay tuned on that one. We are working, as we were speaking, we're working on having this process documented, because we're seeing this request being it's a repeated request from the customer. The fourth trend is something that I would really like to increase awareness, not just only in the CityEngine user group, but in the larger GIS user group as well. This is what I was talking about at the beginning, that sometimes in the project that I got, when we were scoping the project, none of us thought this actually will involve CityEngine in the end. However, CityEngine became a tool that really changed the game. And this is something related to 3D symbology. And this actually echoes with Sylvia's presentation at the very beginning, which is how CityEngine plays into the whole ArcGIS ecosystem as well. So in my user case, not every one of my clients, so first of all, not every one of my clients has access to CityEngine. Even if they do have access to CityEngine, not every one of them knows how to use it or feel comfortable using it. So if they're trying to use certain customized 3D symbology in ArcGIS Pro, the out-of-box offer that we have has its limitation, right, in general. And especially if they would like attribute-driven symbology, then some of the out-of-box offering that we have in ArcGIS Pro probably would be limited in that way. So in that case, my approach is to generate that 3D symbol in CityEngine based on the client's needs. Of course, most of the time it's attribute-driven, and then package that as a rule package and pass it to clients so that they can directly digest that RPK in ArcGIS Pro as a 3D symbol. If you have not tried this workflow, highly recommend. So you can actually use a procedural field, right? You can use the CityEngine rule package as a procedural field to generate your 3D symbol in ArcGIS Pro. So in other words, if you don't need to open CityEngine, but you can use the rule package you generate from CityEngine in ArcGIS Pro to generate the 3D model for you. However, something I wanted to mention is that after you generate the 3D symbol only remains as a symbol. So in other words, if you apply a symbol to a line feature, even though the symbol looks 3D volumetric, your data is still a line feature, right? So if you publish that data online, it will show up as a polyline. It will not carry over the 3D symbol with you. So that brings me to my next point, is that how do we enable the 3D analysis and basically enable all of the wide range of 3D analysis function we have in ArcGIS Pro from the very step, right, CityEngine rule package to that. So the good news is that there is an easy way for you to turn a 3D symbol, for example, you generated from CityEngine rule package, into a multi-patch first. And that tool is the layer 3D to feature class. So assuming, let's say, if you create a 3D symbol from your RPK, you're pretty happy with what you see, you wanted to bake it right into a feature layer, multi-patch, you could use this tool and you will get a feature layer in the end. And that basically opens up all of the opportunities that you could run, like the analysis opportunity you could run on multi-patch, for example, volume analysis, right, shadow analysis, like these kind of 3D-based analysis function, which cannot be done with symbology. However, it could be done with 3D models in the end. And on this topic, I would like also to basically emphasize on another additional step that in my workflow, I realized that not many people are aware that we have this feature is 3D object feature layer. So you could turn your multi-patch into something called 3D object feature layer. And I believe that we actually have our product team, Rodney Chin of the 3D feature layer on this call right now as well. So the good thing about the 3D object feature layer is that you could add different kind of 3D formats to your multi-patch. And so that your multi-patch can be converted into those kind of formats. So I took a screenshot of the existing 3D formats you could add to your multi-patch. As you can see, that basically covers a wide range of the standard 3D data formats that we have. And the good thing about the 3D object feature layer is that it does not have any of the loss in storage. It carries over the information. And also, if you would like to work on your 3D object feature layer in other software, so for example, if you wanted to work on your model in Blender, you work on it, and if you wanted to bring it back to ArcGIS Pro, it saves all of the georeferenced information. So it will come back to your model exactly where you positioned before. So the whole slides you're looking at here is actually the workflow that I'm trying to promote and also implement a lot in my daily workflow as well. Because oftentimes, like I said, right, when people request, I want 3D symbology, we never thought that CityEngine would be needed until we realize, oh, you're talking about customized symbology that we actually cannot offer in ArcGIS Pro. That's when CityEngine comes in play. And to turn the power of CityEngine to not just a symbology, but actually a model you can run analysis from, then we can enable the 3D analysis from the 3D symbology that you create from CityEngine. So that's something I would like to emphasize. Here is this trend. The last trend is also something that Sylvia already touched on, is immersive experience, right? So if you have the 360 VR is something that we have for a while. You can directly export it from from CityEngine, and I took a screenshot of the 360 VR experience website we have at Esri. You can see that a lot of them are the 360 VR experience that you can directly export. We are also getting requests where people are trying to look at create these immersive experience of their sites in general. And they would like to see, for example, if I have a utility related clients, they would like to see, well, what if I put my utility structure here, there, what will be the visibility look like? Will it block anything? Will it do any harm, to the existing feature, etc. So in that case, CityEngine is also very useful. Actually, the usefulness of CityEngine comes in multiple perspectives, right? Sometimes, like the step that we talked about, parcelization. Sometimes we could actually play with the different kind of ways to parcelize stuff in your, before you turn your scenario into an immersive experience, and try to see, well, what if we place the things on this parcel versus that parcel? Or we could use CityEngine, of course, to generate the models, right? And then to combine the CityEngine models with other models if you wish, and turn that whole experience into a immersive experience. So like I said, in my workflow, CityEngine has always been a very, very useful tool. Sometimes it's the main tool we already know, right? For example, like the 3D modeling examples at the beginning, the hotel one, clients already know, and I already know coming in that CityEngine will be the main tool that we're going to use to do this project. And most of the time, CityEngine comes in very, very handy when neither of us, realize that, hey, we actually will need CityEngine down the road. But the product becomes very handy when it comes to enhancing the 3D symbology, for example, and creating the immersive experience environment. Yeah, so those are the 5 trends that I like to share with you all based on my experience working at professional services. Please feel free to connect. That's all.
All right, so there's a question which came in. So how are pro users how are pro users create their RPKs in case there is no CityEngine knowledge around in an organization? Yeah, so basically because so it's a little bit strangely formulated, but so if an ArcGIS Pro user, as what you showed just as an example, if they would like to create a rule package, but at the moment the only way to actually author a rule package is through CityEngine, and maybe nobody knows something about CityEngine, or they may even not know that they have a CityEngine license. What would your personal advice be to companies like that?
So that's a great question, Simon, actually, because that is a real concern, and in reality that happens a lot. Usually the approaches are two ways. The first is that's why professional service exists, is that they could contract us, to help them to author the RPK, and that's usually the case. Because in that user case, usually is we already got a contract with the project, and then we realize, hey, we actually need to use RPK to generate the customized symbol for you and pass the RPK to you, and that's usually what happens. And another offering is if for some reason, if the user find it, wow, this is super cool, now I wanted to learn CityEngine, then we have the knowledge transfer option as well, which is we can tailor sort of like a CityEngine training from professional service side, and offer that training to you, and based on what you need, and basically get you started on how to write RPK to your needs.
Nice, yeah, makes absolute sense. And for other people that maybe don't live in the United States, or maybe are in an area that doesn't have strong, let's say, Esri professional services around, which online resources in general would you recommend to learn more about, next to just your blog, right? But which other sources do you think would be helpful, specifically, let's say, for procedural and attribute, let's say, infused 3D symbology?
I would say if someone wants to learn, that's really a two-part question, I think, because Matt, just like you said, if someone wants to author RPK, they have to write the rule in CityEngine. And I think to learn that, the best way, honestly, is the tutorials that the CityEngine team has. That is really the best way to learn CityEngine. You need to have the patience, to go through the tutorials. You will learn a lot already. And then regarding how to bring that back, now let's assume you have an RPK, how to bring that back to Pro, that's something that we can work on. That's something, if there is a need for that, I'm super happy, to work on blogs, just online tutorials and post it on Esri side to help you with, with that last mile, basically.
Nice. All right. I'm sure we will hear more about that from you in the future. Looking forward to it. Very cool. Thank you so much, Lele, for the presentation.